If you're somebody that does an awful lot of stretching, but doesn't really seem to notice much improvements in your mobility, then I'm gonna go through a lot of points and explaining why this might be happening, because there's nothing worse, there's nothing more frustrating than wasting your time, right? So hopefully you appreciate that. And the reason you should listen to me is because I'm a former British paratrooper and Special Forces support group operator. I've trained thousands of elite soldiers, now I've trained hundreds of grapplers and helping them delete injuries and build their physical body armour to keep them on the mats long term. Mobility is often thought of as a little bit of warming up before a training session and a little bit of cooling down, maybe the odd yoga session thrown into a week, but by being a bit more precise, you can reduce the amount of time that you have to do it and you can get way more results, right? I'm going to start things off by saying you need to understand the reason, fundamentally the reason why you are choosing to stretch. Are you choosing to stretch to give your muscles a little bit of relief for a long day at work or a busy night on the mats? Is it to reduce pain from an old injury? There is a whole host of reasons why you might have chosen to spend time stretching. And most people are doing it as like a reactive way to get a bit of relief, to, you know, their hips are feeling a little bit tight, they're going to do a little bit of hip flexor stretching. So the reason people enter these training methods sometimes is, my hips feel tight, I need to stretch them. It's like, okay, if that's you, then have you ever considered strengthening the areas rather than just trying to make them a little bit longer? The problem is with stretching, and this is where it catches so many people out, is because it gives you a bit of relief. Like, by stretching tangled up muscle fibers, they become more lengthened and less tangled up, allowing blood flow to now get to these, you know, hard to reach places, especially if you're doing a certain job role or whatever. It's a lot of sitting down. And then on the mats, you're doing a lot of sitting down as well. So you're going to get instant blood flow relief. It's going to feel better for a couple of hours, but you've got to be able to identify the reason you chose these things in the first place. Now, if it was for random tightness, not actually to develop your mobility levels, then strength may have served you a hell of a lot better. What I mean specifically by strength, you've got to think about your body's ability to absorb the demands in which you are placing it under on a regular basis. Now, it's very hard to comprehend the demands of Jiu-Jitsu because it's an adrenaline-fueled, crazy, fun experience. It's social, there's humor, it's, you know, great cardio, there's strength in there, there's a complete mixture of absolutely everything. But because there's a mixture of everything and there's so much thinking and problem solving, it's very hard for you to reflect and be like, hold on a minute, what was actually happening there? And now I'm not expecting you to know every single movement that you did and try and counteract that with stretching. I'm just expecting you to understand that there is a lot of demands that are placed through your muscles and joints. Now, making a muscle longer doesn't actually increase your body's capacity to absorb all of these crazy demands, not just on the mat, off the mats as well, with less of the adverse effects. It doesn't do that. So I don't know why people choose these things when it doesn't actually solve. Think about capacity. Your body's capacity is like a cup or a bucket. Everything that you do in a day adds to that cup. And as you're starting to get older a bit, this cup's getting smaller. Stretching is you responding to the water that's overspilling. If you're stretching for relief, the water's now overflowing and you're now trying to put that water back in, or you're trying to put a plaster on the water falling out of the bucket by stretching. You're reacting to the thing rather than trying to improve the size of the bucket, improve the amount of things that you can do with less of the adverse effects. So if you improve your physical capabilities, Jiu-Jitsu, the demands of Jiu-Jitsu appears less on your body. Hopefully that makes sense, right? That's like the underlying philosophy and mindset. Hopefully you can take a little bit from that. Next thing, right, mobility. So if we're thinking about stretching to improve mobility in certain areas of our body, this is the to really improve the quality of those stretching sessions. You've got a few different ways in which you can stretch, but understand the fundamental flaw with just stretching. So when you do untangle these muscle fibers and you hold the lengthened position for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, you are basically training the strength of your muscles, right? You're training the strength of your muscles at its end range, and this is called an isometric contraction. Think of like you doing a plank. When your abdominal muscles are active, but they're in the shortened position when you're in a plank because you're braced and your lower back and stuff like that. When you're stretching, it's exactly the same, but it's at the muscles at the lengthened position. This sounds great. It's like, oh, right, I'm now gaining strength in the end ranges. This is okay. However, you've still got another 2 muscle contractions in which you could be doing at the end ranges to bank that new end range. So you could do movement at these end ranges. And what I mean by that specifically is you could do strength movements at these end ranges. So don't think of stretching as body weight alone. Think of, yes, yoga and certain yoga poses as your entry to mobility training, absolutely. But once you can do them to a decent standard, progress them and do it with weight, because weight improves the strength. Range of motion, range of strength, it's the same thing. So it's about intent. Intent, not just to develop the range of motion in which you can do, it's intent to develop your strength as well. Because going back to my earlier point, when you start improving your strength at these end ranges, the demands of Jiu-Jitsu is far easier than if you didn't have any strength in these end ranges or any mobility. So there's that point as well. And then the next point, intensity. The intensity you need to train at to develop your mobility is close to failure. Now, this may seem like, oh, I'm going to pull my muscle. Just warm up. You'll be surprised that you'll be fine. I swear to God, you'll be fine. So you do a warm up, and then you build into close to failure, close to muscular failure. Now you can do this in a number of different ways. You can do this for a long passive hold, and the limitation of passive holds is what I've said earlier on, where we're only actually doing one of the muscle contractions. That's why we don't gain strength. That's why we never actually capture long-term mobility development, because we're only training a passive end range. And most people on the mats, they'll do a few yoga poses before they do jiu-jitsu, enough to like get them back to survival mode. Instead of getting you back to survival mode, why don't you raise that survival mode up? Why don't you raise that fucking, what do you call it? Raise the bar. You don't need to be constantly getting yourself back to survival mode. You increase your ceiling. Your ceiling doesn't need to be, okay, I can manage this now. Your ceiling should be, right, it's up here and I need to develop my physical capabilities to get here, or I need to increase the size of the bucket so that I can do more crazy shit for the rest of my life, instead of going back to survival mode. But survival mode's down here. It's such a low bar, right? So back to intensity. There's a common theme, excuse me, there's a common theme with men as they're getting on a bit. And it's kind of sad to see. It's like every year we're on this planet, it's more socially acceptable to start taking your foot off the gas, which results in your muscles, your joints becoming physically weaker because you're taking foot. Oh, I'll have a rest day today. I'm training smarter now. You're just wasting your time. If you train with intent to develop your physical capabilities every single week, you go in the gym, you lift weights, you do mobility training with the intention to increase how mobile certain joints are, hamstrings, your knees, your hips. If you have that underlying intent when you go into the gym, instead of just blood flow, yeah, feelings. If you have the intent to develop your physical capabilities every single week, you log your workouts, you will do so, right? Because it comes from brain power fundamentally. But bringing this back to mobility, how can you bring this into your mobility training? You've got a few different ways, right? And I like to split it up. If you actually struggle with mobility in Jiu-Jitsu, by the way, comment below body triangle. I'm going to basically bring out a program specifically for blokes that don't have the ability to do a body triangle, and I'm going to get you on that program. So comment below body triangle. That'll be 3 sessions per week for body triangle specifically, and I'll get you to the body triangle. No questions asked. However, it will be currently for waiting list only. What was I going to say? Intensity. There are 3 ways, right? And this brings into my body triangle program that I'm going to bring out. Strength is the first way and the best way, right? Not just about isometric strength, which is the weird, the plank position at the lengthened position, but also the other contractions, the concentric contraction, the eccentric contraction. So if you were doing this pose here, let me just lower this. So let's just say I'm in a fucking pigeon pose here, right? Instead of me going, yeah, I'm chilling out, this is now probably about 30% intensity for me, right? Now, if I wanted to develop my strength in this end range, now you can probably imagine my glutes really long at the moment, I'd put a dumbbell here and I'd do this little movement here that now captures the end range strength of that area. So you don't just think about willy-nilly watching the TV and doing a stretch. When did watching the TV and doing a stretch ever cause improvements in your physical capabilities? You have to have precision and you have to have intensity. So we can do it by improving our strength in these end ranges, and that means progressively overload. Start with a dumbbell, start with body weight, then add a dumbbell, then add some fucking heavy weight, and then just keep on that endless scale of progressing the strength in these end ranges until you are happy with your mobility levels at that point. Strength. You've got your passive holds, but do them a lot longer than you actually think you need to do them. You want to be doing these for 45 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, but you need to be in the end ranges, like really pushing the end ranges, not just, oh, that feels like a little bit of a stretch there. See how like people, when they're training or when they're trying to train, can start to fall into like a comfort realm within that training rep or that set. We can stop a set too early on like bench press, even because it starts to get uncomfortable. We can not stretch our hamstrings much because we think it's going to pull our hamstrings and snap our hamstrings. It's not. Hamstrings are fucking extremely strong. So when you're doing a passive hold, you're doing a hold, push it. Warm up, do some bike work or whatever, and then go into your stretches, build up to it with a couple of easy ones, and then have a couple of really, really hard working sets where your literally eyes are bleeding for 90 seconds straight and you're reaching for your toes with absolute intent. Think about how much better that is going to serve you. You're going to be fucked. Another thing, resting in between your stretches as well. If you're trained to the required intensity, you shouldn't be able to go into a hip flexor stretch straight into a hamstring stretch. You should be fucked. Your muscles, you should be I'm sweating thinking about doing this, by the way. When you do it properly, it's a fucking workout. So, close to failure on your passive like end range holds. And the last one is you could do endurance as well. So you've got strength, you've got your long holds to failure, and you've got endurance where you could do, now you're starting to build up the strength. It's like, okay, cool. Instead of doing strength, I'm going to do body weight, but I'm just going to do 50 reps. So you could be in this front leg elevated pigeon pose and you're doing your reps and you just do 50 of the fuckers. Or you could put your head down here, you could put your head down there to get different types of strength work through that lengthened glute. Hopefully you understand the 4 points that I've made here. Like, I'm not going to give you exercises on this channel much. I'm going to give you principles in which you can follow and apply to your own mobility training or strength training. So the first one I've said there is acknowledge the reason why you even chose to do stretching in the first place. The second point, consider doing strength at these end ranges. The third one, make sure your passive holds are done to a really high intensity. And then the third way you can do it is with endurance as well. So all of that will massively upgrade your mobility training. And yeah, hopefully you appreciate that, and I'll see you in the next one.